Welcome back to another week of Let the Journey Begin. I am Alex Meschi, filling in for Hillary Roberts with the one and only Mr. Jason Waller.
Thank you, bud.
Thanks for coming back. Good to have you back.
Thank you. It's nice to have you here. Hey, we had a really cool week last week. Even though there was a lot of stuff on my end that I was going through with grandma passing, funeral and all that, it was really cool to be able to have this amazing fundraiser that we did for RSF with our buddy that we're going to be having on today at the Angel Stadium, basically having a couple hundred seats allocated to people that are in recovery and wanting to serve the cause. And we had a packed house. We had a lot of people supporting, and it was incredible. It was something that you were out there grilling, 200, 300 hot dogs? And
Yeah, it was cool to have the support from Northbound, The Edge, South Hills Church, a few other groups. We had 250 seats. We raised about $4,500 after all expenses were paid. Like you said, I made about 200 hot dogs in the parking lot, thanks to our guy Rudy here, who'll be joining us in just a moment. But it was a great day. It was hot. We had the Big A marked off. Everybody had a great time. I know a bunch of people from Northbound were just crushing hot dogs. They said that they were the best hot dogs they've ever had. So I guess kudos to me. I didn't know a hot dog could be that good.
Or they've been in treatment too long. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
But yeah, no, it was a great event. And we had 250 seats between two sections. And the Angels pulled it off. I mean, we had a Shohei Ohtani home run right in front of us. A couple people in our section got foul balls and kind of had to, actually pay attention so you didn't get hit with something. It was good times.
Yeah, no, we won the game 8-7, which was great. But I think what's really cool about this is obviously the event and being able to bring awareness and education to this. But I think what's really cool is how much the tides are changing just within the public as a whole. I mean, you would never have seen or heard of this 10, 15 years ago at any major league or professional sports event. Where they're actually, supporting, at least not in my experience, supporting mental health addiction and really wanting to give back. So I think that's what's really cool for me is to see how much the tides are changing.
Yeah, the community support's huge. Thanks to Rudy, we had about $600 in community restaurant gift cards that were donated to the foundation. From Joe's Italian and Ladera Ranch to Flamingos and Franco's Famous and Laguna Hills and even High Park Tap House in Mission Viejo. So thank you guys for the support. We utilized those prizes in our raffle, and we were able to pretty much send everybody home with some form of prize.
Yeah, awesome. Well, without further ado, let's bring on the Rowdy Rude. Rudy is somebody that I met, I don't know, probably 5 years ago now. And I think it's really cool because I met him in a very vulnerable state in his life, going through some of his trials and tribulations, but always saw an incredible man, and always saw somebody that was driven, had motivation and purpose. He's also very well known down here in the Orange County area for his Christmas trees. We got Rudy's Christmas trees and Dr. CBD with us. So thanks for joining us, brother.
Yeah, thank you for having me, actually. We met January 21st of 2017. That's when my official journey began. And
damn, bro. Good memory.
We're still talking.
The date.
Yeah. That's part of my problem is the photographic memory, but it serves its purposes.
Right. No. Well, it's cool. It's cool to that we've had this relationship and have stayed in touch, and especially to see where you're at today and what you've been able to accomplish. Just like you and I, we've had some bumps and barriers that we've had.
Well, I look up to you, man. So keep going, and a lot of people probably look up to you, just so you know.
So. Oh, I appreciate that, man. I really do. I just hope you weren't following too closely when I was going through my own, So
I was, and that's part of why I'm still talking to you.
Yeah. Fair enough, man. Well, look, that means a lot, Rude, and I'm stoked that you're here. I'm going to hit you with, what did you want to be when you grew up?
A police officer.
Oh, my God.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, let's start. Okay, let's talk about this.
I got to ask, why?
Well, I'll tell you why. This is very kind of important to my story. So when I was born, my dad was in prison my whole life. So I saw him come in and out. Up until I was 3 or 4 years old. And then he went away to prison till I think 18. So I didn't see him then. And I even, growing up, I was I just don't want to be like him. I want to be better. I want to be different. They made him a bad person. you know. So like I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be a cop. I even joined the Orange County Sheriff's Explorer program, did that whole thing. And then I found myself around 18, 19, I ended up having to leave to Miami on my own. I was homeless, so that kind of just changed my plans.
So you aspired to be a police officer for basically your whole life.
When I was a kid, yeah.
Well, I mean, you said all the way up until 18, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was a pretty
I was
good...
doing the Explorer program. I was doing the academy. I was going ready to go.
Yeah, so technically as a kid, but I mean, it was half your life. I mean, a good chunk of your life that you're wanting to do that. So I got to ask, what happened?
What happened? Well, I actually got kicked out of the Explorer program.
Why?
I was on the way to an academy in Chandler, Arizona, and one of the teammates or whatever upset me. So I kind of
Got physical.
kind of got physical, and yeah.
So the rest is history.
Yeah.
And
Well, no, okay. So I ended up, I was a kid and I poked the chair behind him with a pen and I got kicked out of the program for vandalizing county property.
Oh, okay.
That was their reason.
Okay, that's not what I was expecting to hear.
Yeah,
But,
that was a
okay,
pitch from left
okay.
field. Okay.
So during that time, though, I mean, so you brought up something. You brought up a big bombshell. You said your father was incarcerated.
Yeah, he came from Cuba and he went to prison multiple times, but
Was that through all your adolescent?
yeah, so he
years?
ended up leaving, I think, when I was like 5, and I didn't see him again till like 18 or 19.
Where was your mom during this time?
She was in Orange County, Irvine.
But she was. So she was. You were with your mother, though.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Up
so your
until-
dad was the one that was just absent in your childhood.
Yes.
Okay, got it. So how would you? So going through that, growing up in that, obviously, that is, there's a lot of stuff that happens there. Not having that, father figure, that mentor in your life. Is that what kind of accelerated your addiction? Would you say?
Through my journey and all my experiences, it hasn't been perfect, but I've actually grown and progressed. And I found out that actually my trauma began way before. Like, it wasn't just not having a dad. There was some physical abuse. There was some sexual abuse. There was, I'm one of 5 kids, and we have, besides the last 2, different dads.
Right.
So I saw dysfunction growing up. And so as I got older, I thought, like, what's wrong with me or this and that. But I later realized that it was the trauma that I had gone through when I was younger that I just hadn't worked on.
How old were you, and was that when that took place?
Well, the physical abuse was from like 3 or 4 till like I left home at 6 to 16 when I ran away and lived in my car. But from the church and the abuse there, which that happened from 11 to 14, but I didn't do anything till actually the Coach Sandusky case came out on the Penn State coach. And I was watching ESPN and I was like, oh, wait, they should have reported this. And then, so, it's been, there's multiple things that have made me, I think, the way I am. But
wow.
So to track the timeline, grew up, wanted to be a police officer. Dad's in and out in jail starting when you were about 5 or 6 or so. You had some physical abuse at home and later on some sexual abuse. At 16, you ran away from home, you said, right?
yes.
And you were living in your car. What made you go to Miami?
Okay. So at that point, I was living in my car and I had nowhere to go. And I had a grandpa that lived out there. And so one of my good friends, Bo, actually put me on the next flight out. And I went there and I stayed with my grandpa for about a month. And he was a truck driver. And part of our route was Miami Beach and South Beach. And stopped at the Delano Hotel. And I got a job at the hotel. And I just moved to the beach on my own. And I had a studio and been on my own ever since.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
what point did you start using, or when did substances come into the picture?
That's very interesting. I used to tell people that because I was afraid to get beat when I got home or tortured, I would tell people, and this was a lie, but I would say everybody thought my dad was a cop. My stepdad that
Right.
beat us, I'd say he was a cop, so that my friends wouldn't ask me to get loaded with them. So I didn't actually smoke weed or drink till after high school. Yeah, I was the
Wow.
designated driver. I was the guy that gave people rides, and
So what was the age of first time use?
21.
Of anything.
21.
Wow.
No, pot. I tried pot in like 18 after high school, but alcohol 21 in Miami. Oh yeah, it was fun.
So okay, you try it then, right? Which is interesting because they also say, one of our mutual friends here, Dr. Hedrick, there's a study that's been shown that if you do not use or drink by the age of 21, you have a 90% chance of not ever struggling with substance abuse. So you're right on that teeter-totter line. That's just a fact that we've learned over the course of this, right?
And I was a blackout drinker though. Even at that age, when I started, I didn't start slow. That's one thing I learned about myself quickly, is that I didn't know how to control it.
So instantly
I was allowed.
you were having blackouts from the moment, like right when you started drinking?
Yeah, I would drink a lot. Yeah, till I couldn't sleep or pass out.
Wow.
So, literally drinking until you were unconscious.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's one of the first signs of alcoholism is blackout. So where did that take you though? Okay. So 18, you smoked a little pot. 21, you started engaging in alcohol. What was the span of the addiction here? Where did this
I
end up?
did cocaine in Miami. I was I had injured myself, and at that point they'd given me narco. I tried some for my ankle. Didn't know anything about it. And so got up to that. Didn't, I have no criminal issues. I've never, I had a wet and reckless back in 2011 for being the designated driver. So somehow I was able to maintain that. But it got as far as drinking and abusing pharmaceuticals towards the end. That's really what took over me, was the prescription painkillers.
So, I know that you had met Jason about 4.5 years ago now. At what point did you realize that the drinking and the pain pills became a problem and you needed to do something about it?
I realized this in 2014 when Wells Fargo, where I used to work, sent me to treatment 3 different times for 30 days. But every 30 days, the day I got out, the same insurance that paid for my treatment also paid $5 for another script. So I figured out the system, and I learned a lot along the way.
Yeah, well,
So I never believed in treatment because of that back then in 2014, till I got another level of care back in 2017. That's where I met them.
yeah, and I think what we're seeing is 2 things. One's kudos to Wells Fargo to actually helping you get into treatment through either, I'm assuming, their HR EAP programs. But
I still actually talk to all of them, all my managers. I'm friends with all of them. I'm friends with.
So you were an employee of the bank.
Oh yeah, from 2009 to 15, yeah, till they asked me to.
Yeah, and then I think the second picture we're seeing is that 30 days is not enough. I mean, you did it 3 times. Clearly, it's not enough. Now, I wonder if you had done 90 days or a 6-month stint that first time. I mean, do you think it would have stuck better, or you would have picked up more? Had a greater appreciation for the recovery that you now had?
That's interesting. You identified that, because I never believed that. So I actually did a 90-day program for the first time at Tres Vistas in San Juan or San Clemente. And that's when I was able to get my first 11-month of complete 100% nothing, no pills, no drinking, not even pot, and till Christmas came. And then my pattern was a lot of like business or stress would take me out, even if it was for a day, and I'd bounce back. That's part of my story. But yes, so I absolutely am a proof that the 90-day program works because your brain actually doesn't start to heal itself for 90 days. You've been under the influence for however long. Your prefrontal cortex isn't even firing on all cylinders. Plus, you're on all these detox meds and going through therapy and going through like all the destruction you've caused. So like the magic doesn't even happen till after that.
So my question though to you is looking at this in the scope of everything that you've gone through is, did you address the traumatic incidences that happened to you in the early stages of your recovery process, or did that not happen until later down? Or have you even processed them? Have you done therapy? Have you done trauma therapy?
Part of my growing is now I'm at the point where treatment's been great. You can go to treatment 15 times. It's what I have found that works for me is the post-treatment, what you do after rehab. Because if you can go to rehab and get clean and sober from whatever, but if I never took the time to work on the trauma that made me that way, I would continue.
The cycle would repeat itself.
Yeah. So what I'm doing different and better now is attacking those things and looking at it with a clear mind and, with no mind altering substance. I haven't been a part of the Cures system since I don't know how long. I used to, Cures is the database that tracks all your prescriptions.
Right.
That's kind of cool to say, in years.
Yeah. So again, looking at and I'm following what you're saying, but for the trauma though, have you done any specific work around that?
Yes. Recently therapy.
But it's been recent, right?
Recently.
So do you think that, because the reason I'm bringing this up is because a part of our stories was the chronic relapsing component, right? And looking at that, because what I hear you saying is it's not hard to get sober, it's hard to stay sober, right? And so I think and so the reason why I bring that up is because, again, is when you go into a treatment setting, again, as you actively arrest the disease, you get stabilized, you're in this container, but the real recovery doesn't start until you get out, right? And I mean, you actually go out to your natural stressors being life, and then, that's why we say it's important to have a controlled environment to be able to bring that back into so you can process. And so I guess it's a two-part question, is with your trauma, because it sounds like you didn't deal with or address the trauma in the early stages of treatment and or through the time that you went through any of it, right? So all the way into, how old were you when you went into treatment?
The
first time? When
Wells Fargo sent me, I was 27, 26.
So, I mean, that's what you're experiencing trauma all the way from through. I mean, it's 20 plus years of collective trauma that's been built up over the course of time, right? So,
and it still wasn't even addressed. I get what you're saying. So just because I'd gone to rehab and detox, that was never addressed or looked into, or post-treatment I never took any further action. And it's very expensive to do that. It wasn't available. And I also didn't do my part. So today, the part that when I relapsed recently, I noticed some of the stuff from the church came up that I had undealt with pain, some traumas, some things I hadn't forgiven that I needed to do. And so, yes, it was all things that I haven't addressed.
Yeah. And again, as I think that's just bringing it up from a conversational standpoint, is I think there's a lot of people that, because drugs and alcohol were our solution, right? And once we remove those and we're stuck with ourselves and or the underlying issues or the things that we need to process, we're never going to be in a better place. And so that's kind of with you. That's where, for me, was what kept resurfacing for relapses, is there was a lot of under the ground stuff that I needed to really look at, right? And I think with you, with the chronic relapsing and those things that were happening, until you've addressed those actual issues, you didn't necessarily start the healing process, correct?
Yeah, or even know where to look.
Fair enough. So what were some of those things, and how did you approach that? I mean, for people that are going through trauma and because you got through treatment multiple different times, you understand, how that mechanism works, but what would be your advice or insight to somebody that has had a lot of trauma that's been underlying, but also struggles with addiction? What would be your advice to them when they're going in to seek help?
First, I wanted to have to change, and I wanted to look at it further. my feedback, or if I had to give any coaching, would be, like I said earlier, but there's more meaning to that. The magic happens after, but you have to put in the work. You have to know what to look for, because there's so many different programs that I've actually been to that it's like, okay, you're done. Now you're off to the races. Or, okay, make sure you see a therapist. But there's no follow-up. There's no structure. There's no much accountability. And so I just found myself being alone, and I don't have family. I've been on my own. Like, my dad's out there. I don't know where he's at. My mom's she's in Irvine. I know where she's at. They're just not involved in my life, and they've never have been. So I have mentors. So your mom though is not a part of your life today?
I
check in on them and I say hi. I will always love her. I'm actually, the therapy I'm getting just now recently is forgiving them, and that's giving me the healing so that I can call my mom again. And now we are talking, and but I wouldn't have gotten that. I didn't get that in rehab. I got it after, through the therapy and through post. Actually, a lot of it's therapy.
So what it sounds like to me, I mean, Jason, you know a lot more about recovery and treatment, more so than I do. But to me, it sounds like, based on what you're saying, Rudy, is that the first 30 days is a matter of getting you physically stabilized. You've been putting who knows what into your body, whether it's, opiates or heroin or alcohol or whatever, but getting your body to a position where you are now stabilized and able to now progress. From there, now you need to start unpacking the psychological trauma or the emotional trauma to essentially try and make yourself as whole as possible. A lot of people think they just go to, treatment or go to detox residential. They're in for 30 days. Cool. I'm sober. I'm good. But what we've been hearing, not just from your story, but pretty much everybody, is that no, you're not good. As soon as you're stabilized, now it begins. When the rubber meets the road and you're in aftercare, that's when the real work begins. Up until that point was just making sure that you are in a position to be able to be coherent and physically capable, because some people get some real gnarly physical ailments from whatever they're using. But once you're in the right mindset, now you need to unpack all that trauma and all that emotional damage and really start to heal then.
Which doesn't always happen. And it does take that long, because then your mind can actually handle it. Because when someone ends up to the point where they're actually going to detox, in my experience, like, we've lost it all. We don't have it. Like, we are on begging. We're like, so we're not even at that point coherent. We don't even know we want therapy right there. We just want to get better and eat, the bare essentials.
So what it sounds like though is it sounds like you're still in the process of all this. You know what I mean? It sounds like you're still going through, not in a negative way. I'm saying as you've gone through this since you're in your mid-20s, now you're in your mid-30s, right?
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
36.
Yeah, so you're mid-30s. So mid-30s, but it's taken you, again, as I'm looking at this, it's taken you 10 years to navigate these waters and go through this process. And it is very individualized, and what somebody goes through is specific to them, right? And again, as looking at this, I think what I'm taking away from what you're saying is how important it is for it to be individualized, because of the stuff that you've gone through. You went to treatment and they were just trying to address the issues with the alcoholism and the addiction. But again, is where I think your part could have played in more, and correct me if I'm wrong, is being able to open up more about the trauma and the different things that you were going through in the earlier stages. Fair enough to say?
No, very, very accurate. Yeah.
So again, it's just because with our listeners is the whole thing is we've created this environment for it to be the most safe and trusted place to be able to come to be able to talk about this with no judgment, to also try to look at, one is again, very grateful for your vulnerability, because when you express vulnerability, it creates humility. And for people that creates a safety for them. And I'm trying to give people an opportunity to look at what you're going through and help them understand, because there's a lot of substance here. You went through a lot of different stuff. I mean, just as you at a very young age, and then to really have nobody to lean on, no mentors, nothing in the early stages, besides when you moved to Miami to meet with your grandfather, which was very brief, right? But I mean, so you really had to figure a lot out on your own, which I can't relate to at all. I was on the total opposite end of you, having all the support in the world and still, you know what I mean? But that's what's beautiful about this. Same painting, different colors, right? That's why we ended up we're sitting here, and there's a lot of relatability, a lot of connectivity on this. So I think that's like one of the biggest takeaways is I'm seeing the resemblance of this. And I love that's why we do this, because I'm able to take a lot away from this. But what I'm really hearing though is that you're still in it right now. Not that you're necessarily battling the addiction side of it, but you're still going through a lot of the healing process. And again, I think we've had people on here in the early stages, but it sounds like, and again, it's not a bad thing, but it sounds like you're right in the heart of this still.
Yeah, I think for myself, I'm always going to also want to be in it.
What do you mean by that?
I want to be in recovery.
Well, of course.
And so we say, oh, I may have been through it 10 years and I've had some slips and I used to beat myself up. Here's the other thing for the viewers is don't have guilt and don't have shame, because that takes you out longer. But the way I look at it now is I have 10 years of experience that I can share with other people. Some can relate with me, some won't. Some will attack it, some will knock it, some will appreciate it. But I'm looking for the people that I can help that want to become better, that want to change their lives, and that I can relate with. Because anybody who tells you that recovery and that their story is perfect, that's admirable. But
it's also not really realistic.
I have also found that the own Bible that people read says you are not supposed to be perfect. So it's all about progressing and getting better. I may have had some slips. They lasted a day and I got back. I threw myself back into recovery. I called people that I knew. I asked for help. And that's, I think, what I do different instead of.
Well, no, and I want to be clear again, is when I'm saying, like when you said, I want to be in it, is like, look, every day there's an opportunity for growth. I will always be, striving to live a life in recovery every single day. But I think what I'm saying to you is like, you're really in the thick of the healing process from the traumas that happened years and years ago.
Oh, yes.
Does that make sense? So that's what I'm saying, that I feel like you're in the thick of it still is not because of all the stuff that you experienced this in the last few years. I'm talking about you're in this.
This is the first time I'm actually doing the therapy.
Well, you're actually, yes.
In the middle
talking
of
about from the history, from the, back in the day. So that's where I've never calculated that. Knowing you and looking at it is that's really apparent, because every day I'm in this journey of recovery, and it's important to be present and address that. I mean, at the end of the day, I do a daily reprieve and reflect on how I can be better. But when I'm saying you're in it, is you're in it from, you're in this new transition period where you're in the thick of
real time
of going through and processing and healing what happened to you.
Yeah. And it's not easy because, there's PTSD, and having memories. So I'm learning how to deal with that,
So let's do this, man, I want to be able to have you come back. Because it's really apparent with what's going on, because to see this, and you've already made phenomenal strides to where you are today, but I would love to have you back in 6 months, a year, especially after you've done a lot more of this work. But what would be your advice to people? If you could give somebody one action for the day and a takeaway, whether they're struggling with substance abuse, struggling with trauma, abuse, if there was just one piece of advice you could give them, what would it be?
That it's okay to ask for help and to reach out and to not be ashamed, and don't have guilt. So I know you asked for one, but I'll
take 2 or 3, 4.
Extra credit.
Pick up the phone and call the person you trust the most and ask for help and be honest.
I love it. Well, Rudy, really appreciate having you on, honestly, and I appreciate your openness with this.
Thank you.
We didn't get to talk about Rudy's Christmas trees and all the stuff that you're doing. What can you tell us just real quick where Rudy's Christmas trees came from and the mission and the vision that you have for that?
Yeah, so part of the religion I was raised in, we weren't allowed to celebrate Christmas. And so because my name was Rudy and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, I was someone's banker that handled the forest in Oregon. He wanted me to be his rep. I said, no, I have my clients, my book of business. Why don't I just buy from you?
Right.
And it started with a tree lot. And that's where we're at today.
No way. I love it.
Trip.
I love it. Hey, well, if people want to find more out about you or find Rudy's Christmas trees, where can people go to find you?
We're not really active on our social media, but Rudy's Christmas trees, you can Google us. We're not that hard to find in Orange County. You don't even have to put in the name Rudy's. If you just Googled Christmas trees fundraising, we own the whole page.
He's like the greeter of Laguna Beach, you know what I mean? But he's like the greeter of Orange County. Well, thank you so much for being on here, man.
Well, thank you for having me, and I appreciate this, and I can't wait to check back in 6 months for a follow-up.
Sounds good.
Christmas will be over.